So when it comes to online marketing, psychology and marketing go hand in hand. When you understand why people buy certain things, when you understand why people take certain actions, why you understand why people resonate with certain brands, that comes down to the psychology of online marketing. Whether you want to realize it or not, online marketers understand psychology very well, and that's why they get you to really resonate with a certain brand. They really get you to persuade you, should I say, to go and purchase a product or a service. Alright, so why do we buy things? And how do marketers use our psychology to get us to buy? So these are three different categories that I have on here. And the first lesson for this one is because we are biologically highly driven to act in ways that increase our chances of procreation, marketers such as myself use this to persuade us to make purchases. Right? So try yawning. And be sure to watch everyone around you, and you'll see that some people will actually mimic you. So did anybody imitate you? And if they didn't, try to attempt it with a close friend or a loved one. And eventually somebody will break, and subconsciously they will try to mimic you. And usually when we witness someone else yawning, it's difficult for us to hold ourselves back. And this is because we have this thing in our brains that we would label as mirror neurons. And they cause us to desire to mimic the actions of other people. So this effect was discovered in monkeys in one study, and when they were grabbing a nut and watching another monkey do it, certain parts of their brains lit up, and so they went and they mimicked and did the same thing. So whenever you hang out with a group of people, you subconsciously start acting and behaving like them, and you start dressing like them, and you start, picking up on their slang and stuff like that, because we subconsciously always mimic each other, right? We're a product of our environments. So our brains react almost identically whether we're performing an action or watching someone else do it. So in an advertisement, this is where marketing takes place, right? In an advertisement, if we see somebody drinking a Coca-Cola wearing an Abercrombie and Fitch shirt, your brain wants to imitate them and buy them. So with online marketing, this is the power of online marketing, how people persuade you to buy certain products or to relate to a certain product. We can literally dial down. Let's say, I'm going to take myself for example, right? I'm 26 years old. I'm into online marketing. I'm into entrepreneurship. I'm into educating myself. I'm into books and stuff like that. An online marketer can go on these platforms, any kind of social media platform. They can find and put all those interests and demographics and my age and sex and my income as well. And they can run an ad in front of me wearing a product or consuming a certain drink or some food or something like that, and I will resonate with that person because it resonates with me. It's who I am as a person. Those are my interests. That person is wearing the stuff that I usually wear. That person is hanging out where I usually hang out, right? If I usually hang out at libraries, or I usually hang out with a group of friends at a local bar or something like that, and I see somebody consuming a certain product, it might resonate with me a lot more. So then what my brain does, it picks this stuff up as a form of dopamine, and it wants to go out there and replicate that. So next time I see that product, I'm going to say, well, subconsciously I'm going to say, well, I resonate with this product or service, and I'm going to use that, right? So we tend to replicate what we see on television. We tend to replicate what we see on ads, specifically ads that resonate with who we are and are specifically targeted to our interest and demographic. So whenever you see an ad that you're like, hey, that's stuff that interests me, hey, that person is very familiar to a friend of mine or who I am as a person, they're not just doing it out of coincidence. They know exactly who you are. So just like we talked about, when you see ads like that, dopamine is released in your brain, and when you're using that product, your brain subconsciously starts releasing dopamine, and also works with mirror neurons to persuade you to buy the product or service. So when you go shopping and you see this product, this pleasure hormone is present and can cause us to overspend. So let's say, I'm a fan of watches, and they send me an ad. Let's say Rolex sends me an ad, and they got this new watch. It's like $20,000. I don't have that immediately handy, and then I reach for a credit card, and I got high interest in it. So now I'm overspending and spending, $20,000 to $30,000 on a Rolex watch when I could have just bought in a cheaper Rolex watch, right? So we tend to overspend. This is why a lot of people spend a lot of money and get into a lot of debt and buy these luxury items, because we get this response effect, and not just from spending money, because that it's within itself is releasing dopamine in our brains, but because we are relating to the product or service that has been sold to us, because now we think we're like that person in the ad. So to grasp this, consider evolution, right? This all comes into play with evolution. We tend to overspend, and we spend money on things we consider is a status upgrade. And this trait, which is inherited from our forefathers, makes us more likely to reproduce, right? And the dopamine rush we get when we go shopping in our body's evolutionary response is to getting us to do things that increase our chances of having more offspring. So not only are they targeting us with people who on the ads that are a lot like us and we can relate to using a product or service, now we're overspending. And the reason why we don't really think with the logical brain and we think more with our monkey brain or lizard brain or our emotions is because we subconsciously want to reproduce. We want that status. So now I reach for my credit card, my high interest credit card, and I bought a Rolex watch for $35,000, right? And that gives me a sense of status. That gives me a sense of I'm the boss, I'm the man, right? And so that subconsciously is releasing dopamine in my brain because I think it's going to attract the opposite sex, right? And we do this sometimes just to fit in with groups of people, to be accepted by the opposite sex or be accepted by a certain group or demographic. We do this because we resonate with a product or service, and it is all happening subconsciously, okay? So the next time that you go and reach and buy a product, think about why you're buying that product. Are you buying that product because you necessarily need it, or are you buying that product because you think it's going to increase your status and attract the opposite sex, right? And a great example of this is the Axe product, okay? And I think a lot of young males can relate to this, me myself included. When I was in middle school, there was a lot of ads that were running on television, because I didn't have a phone at the time. We had like the flip phones, right? We didn't really get a lot of ads on there, but they would market it on television channels where there was a young demographic, young audience of males. And what they would do is they would run these ads that if you put on the Axe spray, you're going to attract the opposite sex, right? There was a whole campaign where they were using the chocolate Axe spray, and the girls would walk in the street and rip chunks off of the guy or bite chunks off of his body because he was irresistible. This is all targeted emotionally towards males. This is all targeted with the whole thing of status and reproduction that is in our DNA, right? So that's a great example of what we're talking about here. But next time that you, like I mentioned, go and reach for a product or a service or anything like that, think about it. Are you actually doing that because it's something that you really need? Is there a necessity of that? Or are you just really just responding on your lizard brain and your reproductive hormones and the dopamine that's being released in your brain? All right, so lesson number 1 again is, because we're biologically highly driven to act in ways that increase our chances of procreation, marketers use this to persuade us to make purchases.